You are listening to the Codependent Millennial Podcast with Sophie Shiloh, Episode 10, Boundary Basics. This episode is part of my series on the 7 essential steps to moving beyond codependency. To receive the full guide along with all of the worksheets and written guidance, just visit codependentmillennial.com/essential, click the button that says Get the Guide, and sign up there. Today we're talking all about boundaries, my fave. As recovering codependents, some of the most important and challenging work we will ever do is around setting and maintaining our own boundaries. Boundary work also includes letting go of all of our expectations that we have mistaken as boundaries. This also includes getting very comfortable with saying no, with being honest in relationships, and with not violating our own boundaries, which is an issue I see all the time. What most of us were conditioned to believe are boundary issues were actually often just issues with expectations we have of others. Someone touching us without permission is a boundary issue. Someone not buying us flowers when we told them we wanted flowers is absolutely not a boundary issue. Someone doing drugs in our home when we told them that this was not allowed in our house is a boundary issue. Someone doing drugs in their own home after you told them you don't want them to do drugs is not a boundary issue. Someone wanting you to let them drive you home while they're drunk or tipsy is a boundary issue. Someone driving drunk or tipsy home themselves after you ask them not to is not a boundary issue. The truth is, other people get to do whatever they want to do, period. Even illegal things, even things you don't approve of. That's where your boundaries come into play. If you want to have a peaceful relationship with someone, learn to release your expectations for how someone behaves, but don't compromise your boundaries if their behavior violates those boundaries. For example, if your father doesn't choose to recognize your same-sex relationship as legitimate and sometimes calls your partner derogatory names, you can choose to still have a peaceful relationship with him by not expecting him to make different choices about his thoughts and beliefs. You're not expecting him to think differently than he does or be different than he is, but you also get to decide exactly how and when you want to interact with him, if at all. You can set a boundary that if he says certain things to you, you'll hang up the phone, leave dinner, or end the conversation. Setting and maintaining that boundary won't feel like a big hug. It won't feel easy. But you have to be willing to uphold that boundary even when it's inconvenient and uncomfortable to do so. The alternative is you continuing to erode your relationship with yourself. So often when we conflate expectations with boundaries, we get so resentful of people for not behaving the way we want them to. When you can release your expectations of people while simultaneously making sure you're taking care of yourself and your own boundaries, resentment has nowhere to live in your life. Another common misconception with boundaries is that they have to be dramatic and super heavy. They do not. Not at all. Having and maintaining a boundary is often a silent, calm, very peaceful act that doesn't really have to involve anyone at all, anyone but yourself. Sometimes we choose to state our boundaries, but sometimes we just know what they are. We know when they're being violated, and we do whatever we need to do in that moment in order to uphold them. That never involves controlling another person's behavior. It just involves us making a decision or taking an action, like hanging up the phone, walking away, saying no, leaving a room, things like that. It's not slamming doors. It's not hitting people. It's not telling people what they are and aren't allowed to do. It's none of that. So oftentimes when I tell clients this, they're kind of relieved because they are afraid of confrontation in the first place. And when I let them know that boundaries can actually be a very gentle and silent, very internal process, it frees them up to really imagine what boundaries they might actually want to set, knowing that it doesn't have to mean confrontation and conflict. So the next thing I want to talk about is people pleasing. As recovering codependents, trying to people please everyone around us is a habit that we're pretty much always in the process of unlearning. I often hear clients defend their people pleasing to me by saying, well, I'm just being nice. I don't want to be mean, right? But people pleasing isn't being nice. It's being manipulative. When you're in people-pleasing mode, your boundaries might as well not exist. You ignore them. You often don't even know that you're allowed to have them or to protect them at all. And you may have been living for so long without any boundaries at all that when you finally do decide to put some in place, the people in your life just feel such a huge shift, this huge disruption, because up until now, they thought everything was fine. They thought there was no problem. They don't see an issue with how things were going. They didn't know that you were unhappy. And why would they? Why would they know that you were unhappy? You were grinning and bearing all of this internal resentment that you never actually communicated. You were showing up dishonestly in those relationships. You never said no. You just ignored your own wants and needs for so long. You violated your own boundaries for so long by showing up in this dishonest way in your interactions with others. That's on you, but that's also where all of your power lies. You have absolute, full, total control over however you want to behave and interact with others, regardless of what your patterns were in the past, and regardless of what other people may think of you now that you're choosing to live life in a new way that includes boundaries and self-respect. If someone has a problem with a boundary that you've decided to set, you have to allow them to have their own thoughts and feelings about you and about the boundary. That's just a rule. You have to. Remember, trying to manipulate the way people see you was what caused you to violate your own boundaries in the first place. So you need to become okay with the discomfort of not trying to control how others think about you. I know this is hard. I know it feels excruciating at times, but it's a new day. You're deciding that you want to honor yourself by setting and honoring a boundary or two. And although it won't feel comfortable or easy, I promise you it is so worth it. Like I said, this is when you get your life back. So my questions for you today are, number one, what is one boundary that you'd like to put in place in your life and why? Make sure you love the boundary and love your reason for having it. And the second question is, how can you treat yourself with love and respect by honoring and maintaining your own boundaries instead of expecting other people to do that work for you? Thank you so much for listening. If you need some free one-on-one guidance around setting and maintaining your boundaries, go to codependentmillennial.com/work-with-me to see if there's an open spot this week. I am officially a professional at boundaries after making every single mistake possible, trust me, and I'd be more than happy to spend 30 minutes for free helping you with this. Tomorrow in lesson 3, we will be talking about feeling your feelings instead of avoiding them or distracting away from them with food, alcohol, overworking, etc., thereby being able to connect more deeply with your inner guidance system rather than being unconsciously controlled by emotions that you're too afraid to feel. And who doesn't want some of that? So stay tuned. Until then, I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon. If you liked what you heard in this episode, join me over on Instagram at Codependent Millennial for more tips on how to move beyond codependency and build your most amazing, vibrant, beautiful, boundary-full life.